university now who are coming, who are sharper than I, who are more talented than I, have better people skills, who could be better presidents for this country then. So let's nurture a whole class of leaders so that we are not desperate for one savior. Let us always have good leaders and it be their standard taken.
Great point. Senator.
You know, there's a quote by Jomo Kenyatta that I like. He says that our children might learn about heroes of the past. Our task is to make ourselves architects of the future. That is what I want to be remembered by, not by any position. Leadership is not position, it is influence. It is what you're able to do from whichever corner you are. I was in the last parliament with Ken. He was a member of Kibra. I was a nominated MP, and he knows the gripe nominated members get. But I'm proud that I was able to bring the highest number of private member bills without any position, you know. So about what I want to go for, I want to be senator for Nairobi for some time. The more I hang out with my friend Mike Sonko, and the more I hang out with the president, the more I don't want any of those positions, because it is tough. Leadership, you know, some of these positions are really tough, and it's not that I'm, you know, afraid of going for those, but I believe that even from where I am, you know, let me make a change. You know, this hunger for politics that you want to be something at all costs, that you know, you can do anything to become a governor or a president. Or is where we get it wrong. You know.
Will that day come, Mheshimiwa? Will that day come where it won't matter? It won't matter who's at State House.
It must come.
I think it will come maybe in another 20 years or so. But I think
so you guys will still be around.
Inshallah.
I think. And it will be a gift to the country so that politics is not as polarizing. But for right now, I think, for instance, these elections that you were asking me about the boycotts. I think one of the statements that NASA made yesterday, and which to me is an important one on two levels, is a statement that we can't let this election stand. It has to be challenged, and what happened on the 26th, and we take it to court, and we have to challenge it because it wasn't a level playing field, and that's why we withdrew. NASA stepped back out of it. And to say we will just move on like nothing happened, we won't take the concerns of Raila Odinga. It's not about Raila Odinga. It's about the millions of Kenyans who believe in it. And I know the intelligence knows this, and Uhuru Kenyatta, as a sophisticated politician, knows that there are people who are not with him and believe and hoped Raila would give them the different direction. We really need a dialogue around clean and fair elections right now. Why? Because if we don't fix it, then no other elections in this country will matter. People won't participate, won't think it matters, and I think there's a space for this country to pull back with this constitution as we have, because let me give it to you this way. There's election cycles. We're finishing the election cycle of 2017. At the presidential level, it was challenged at the Supreme Court, and now and a new election ordered. This cycle didn't end cleanly on the 26th, and anyone who lies to you that it ended on the 26th is deceiving themselves. I think the crisis is just getting started. With the long impact being, if we let this election stand as it is at 26 was good enough, people won't be voting in future and won't believe in the elections. But number two is, if Uhuru Kenyatta is sworn in for his second term based on the election of the 26th, what stands at risk is if there's a major crisis and the country pulls together and say, let's have a dialogue, which Raila has asked for as our leader and we of NASA have asked for, around the elections and having a clean election. Let whoever wins, win legitimately. Then at that point, what you will have is two ways out, and it will be very unfair for Uhuru. Because once you've been sworn in for your second term, and there's a crisis and you haven't served a full second term of 4 or 5 years, then what happens to poor Uhuru Kenyatta? He can't run for another term. We have term limits. Yes. So I think we need to think about that carefully.
Sakaja, you agree?
That to me is important.
Yeah, completely. Jeff, you know, we must be a country that respects and upholds the rule of law. The person who determines when an election is held or when an election is not held is not Raila Odinga. It is not Uhuru Kenyatta. It is not any individual. And that is why I was saying that the winner of this process is the Constitution. Because no matter who you may fashion yourself to be, just by declaring that, in my opinion, this thing is not right, and my party's opinion, let it not be done. There are institutions that actually deal with this. The same institutions that took us back to a fresh election, that said that those candidates who vied must vie. Now, you cannot choose what part of that institution to respect and what not to respect. And I'm glad today I've heard from none other than the member for the former Prime Minister saying that they'll be going to court. Because it means then, just by the action of going to court, that one, you're going to court on an election petition. You were saying earlier there was no election. So now you're actually doing an election petition, meaning you've legitimized the fact that there was an election. And not just that action, it's not just that action that has legitimized it. The fact that the numbers that came out legitimize it. Because if 95% of those who voted for Uhuru Kenyatta still came out and voted, 95%, despite the threats and the intimidation and the violence and all of that, if those who didn't come out, or rather those who were prevented to do, and that's the only time I've referenced the 4 counties, Homa Bay, Migori, Siaya, and Kisumu. Not because it is Luos who are there. In fact, I know Ken would know. I have a lot of respect, admiration, and friends, from there. But because those are the only people who are prevented from choosing whether to come out or not. And where they were allowed to, they came out, If despite the fact that you prevented them and some people tried to come out and people voted and you got at 80% turnout in August, what we got now at 40% is still more than what Raila Odinga got at 40% in August. This election alone has justified that one. So if you choose to go to the Supreme Court, Jeff, you must also prepare to accept the verdict of that same Supreme Court. Because if this country is run based on that, I don't feel it is right. I don't think it is good. This election, in my opinion, was not held to the standards set by the Supreme Court. It is not about your opinion. Go back to that same Supreme Court and they will confirm if this election was held according to their standards, if they allowed, if their forms were serialized. And remember, the August election was annulled not because of any dispute on the number of votes in a democracy. It was annulled because of processes, which the IBC then claimed to have looked at and revised and sorted out. In fact, everybody has now been given access to the servers, including yourselves as media. NASA has access to all those logs and the servers. So the person to measure that standard then is the Supreme Court. And this is a very important point, Jeff, because a country that wants to develop and wants to move towards the future with stability, the only stability you'll find, a country that is stable, is because it has dependable institutions, that it is not the rule of man, it is the rule of law. You cannot talk about the changes you want to make, and we have no problem with the statement yesterday by the former Prime Minister. Was very interesting. I think it was a good statement because he talks about things he wants to change, and he's going out to issues. But you cannot talk about changing a law or creating a law and you don't respect the law that subsides today. Because tomorrow you will make a law that I don't like, and because I don't like it, then I will say I don't like that law, and then I will blackmail you through violence for you to change it again, and then we enter an endless cycle that is a cycle of perpetuity of anarchy. Yeah. So Kenyans have a choice today between anarchy and order.
All right, gentlemen, it's a live show, so we need to get to the tweets and stuff, and I'll save you. I'll let you answer that in a little short while. Monica, what do we go for first? Facebook posts? Okay. Philemon has a question. What are their options on moving forward? Will NASA MPs attend House sittings? What is People's Assembly? What are their opinions on Baba's future versus talks of dialogue and comments on NCCK proposal about Prime Minister post? Mheshimiwa, quickly, if you can, because we don't have too much time.
I can simply say it's not about the Prime Minister, it's not about Baba, it's about the process. Clean, fair, credible elections. That's what we want to negotiate and dialogue on and implement. And I think when you have that, people will accept.
Attending Parliament?
And if we reduce it to it's simply about Baba, God forbid, if Baba were not around here today or tomorrow, God forbid, will that have solved the problem? Will Kenyans wake up and say, oh, no, now we have no more problem, Baba is not around? That's not the way to go. There's still deep-seated, serious problems that must be addressed.
It is reasonable to imagine Baba not being there. But let me say this. We want NASA to go all the way in what they believe in. whatever it is. If you say that you don't recognize these institutions and you don't recognize the National Assembly, which is the real People's Assembly, because since all 45 million cannot come to Parliament, we are organized in ways that we choose one person, then I want to ask, starting with my friend here, to resign as member for Kibra in the National Assembly and attend the People's Assembly. Of course, once they've negotiated with the Bunge la Wananchi, which owns the patent and has a president of the Bunge, to go and attend that one. You cannot have your cake and eat it. You cannot decide to boycott Parliament, but come before 8 sessions are over and always be on time to receive your salary and allowances. You can't do that.
Yeah.
So if you believe it, if you're coming from an ideological point, and I know they are being pressured to resign, I would love to see all NASA members of Parliament and senators resigning to go attend the People's Assembly.
But that's impossible, isn't it?
I want to say this. There's a myth of a tyranny of numbers, and this false self by Jubilee that they are in charge and they have the whole country. The fact of the matter, if they have the whole country, why are they uncomfortable in Parliament without our presence and participation? They decry our absence consistently because they know they don't have legitimacy.
I was about to say, they like you guys.
Legitimacy. So I think it's neither here nor there. We will choose at our own pace our strategies and tactics, including the point he said here that we're going to court. That's yet to be announced and decided. We will do it at our time, and I official our position on whether we're going to the Supreme Court or not, or whether somebody else is going, will be announced.
Monica, what's the next one? Next up. Philip Minor, you say politicians should emulate these two characters. Oh, now your characters, huh? Who aren't bound to ethnicity and cheap politics. Absolutely. Thank you. Anthony, you say these two gentlemen can move this country in the right direction by ensuring the leadership is at its path. Soy Peter, the two legislators should convince their bosses for an all-inclusive government that can make Kenyans of all tribes proud to be in this country. Tweets, okay. David Ngurenganga, you say yes and a big yes, referring to that question we were asking. I can't hesitate voting them as president and deputy in whichever order. Sober, bright, and tribeless leaders. I told you guys. Told you. Not 22, Sakaja, maybe, down the line.
None at all.
Reagan Akil Hassan, you say Sakaja Johnson is a wise man in the wrong side of history. Okoth Kenneth is a Democrat and second liberation strategist. Hey. I see future of Kenyan politics.
Keep him.
Whoa.
Oh, good.
John Leakey, you say yes, referring to the question. The two have demonstrated robust leadership. If independent-minded, they shape the country's politics. Enoch Katiku, I have listened to both speak severally, and it is clear that they listen more and respond with less emotions. Role models. Well done. Some text messages. Wangeshi Grace, you say, you are both great leaders of this country, taking responsibility and also clearly articulating the triggers of violence. Well done for not just blaming ghosts and being honest about matters. Malusu, you say, yes, they are. I like their mature, non-violent, and non-ethnic approach to issues. I wish they can be bold enough to go for their top party positions to influence our future politics. Jerry, you say, two great leaders on the bench today. This is all we need in this country right now. Sober minds. And Kiama Karaoke says, the best JKL I've watched in a long time. This is a conversation of mature people. Thank you, Kiama. Cecilia Yewa has a question for you both real quick. We live in two Kenyas within the same border. Those that are privileged and the children of a lesser God. Awful tribalism and classism. Waheshimiwa, please comment.
I can tell you, I was born and raised in Kibra. There are children of a lesser God. There are children in this great city of Nairobi, one of the best cities in Africa, who today their dinner is out of the trash, leftovers from another family that are picking up garbage, competing with stray dogs such that they can get something in their belly. Our Constitution says a right to food. It's there. I wish all our leadership would rally around issues like that to say it's despicable to have hunger in this country, despicable to have disease that poverty kills you because you get malaria in Baringo County and malaria treatment is 500 shillings and you're too poor to afford 500 shillings. So the poverty kills you and it's not the malaria. So whether it's hunger in Turkana, hunger in Kibera, it's a shock. And I think we need to organize our politics around those things. One of your viewers has asked about inclusivity. I think that is really important. And the leadership on both sides need to address how do you bring inclusivity, but not just for the elite political class, but actually do they, when they get to that table, discuss the agendas of making sure no one's hungry and starving, that everyone has dignity in Kenya. You know, it sounds like a utopia. It shouldn't be. We have the science, we have the technology. In Turkana, we have aquifers of water that are enough to take care of Kenya for 70 years. We're not prioritizing taking care of things like that to liberate Kenyans from the indignity of poverty and hunger. So I think, yes, there are children of a lesser God in this country. I've been in leadership 4 years. It pains me that, and I will continue serving and I will not resign. Where I can do something about it, I will do something about it. In Kibra, I made a choice in the last 4 years and said our policy is Elimu Kwanza, because we had so many challenging issues we could list. But what could I make a difference on at first instance that would impact people generationally? For me, education changed my path, helped me to step out of Kibra. I know tomorrow you're interviewing the director of Starehe Boys Center.
That's right, Charles Machete.
Education changes lives. He went to the Lenana School, and we talk about these things. Lenana School was fantastic when he was there. It shouldn't go down the drain. There should be a Lenana School Foundation with people giving back to keep that school to be the best it could be. And there should be a Starehe Foundation, Stareheans giving back and all to make sure Starehe remains there so that it can turn a child like Ken Okoth from hopeless to hopeful. You know, it can happen. So that's why I'm investing in education. The school, we talked about it, you mentioned it before, Mbagathi High School. We're building that up and it's 90% finished. I think Christian and your team have pictures online they can show. The reason why I asked you, Jeff, is not just because you're a celeb. I asked you because I respect you as a man of letters, as someone who has traveled. You're someone who has read and written. You know, you're someone whose voice matters. And our young people can look up to you. By the way, it's going to be a high school for girls, an affordable day school for girls from Kibera to walk to.
I saw the photo.
So you come in, help us build the library, use your influence, so that out of that can come out writers, you know, award-winning journalists, film producers, all these things you've done, people who've traveled and seen the world. Let that journey begins there. We want to make sure the building is not just the facility, but the resources in it and the spirit of learning and reaching for the sky. That's possible. We could get a Wangari Maathai out of Kibera.
Absolutely.
Just by building that library, putting in the iPads, the e-book readers, the internet connections. So I think there is indeed, as this person asked, two Kenyas. Let's bridge that gap and make sure there is one Kenya. When you say in our national anthem, plenty be found within our borders, it exists. Let's distribute it. And this is not socialism. It's Christianity. It's human basic decency. It's actually our constitution. It says everybody should have a life that's with dignity in Kenya.
It's our humanity.
Yeah.
It's our humanity. Senator.
Jeff, and Ken, really, I hope you will accept the donation I've offered for that library. I hope you will accept
gladly and happily.
Jeff, just like Ken, I was born in the city. Yeah, not in Kibra. I was born just down the road in Ngara. I have been able to see the contrasts, even while campaigning. You know, when you move from the depth of the filth of poverty and just 20 meters away, you're in such grandeur and opulence. And honestly, now from the bottom of my heart, Jeff and Ken, these are the issues Kenyans, the ordinary Kenyan, these are the issues they want us to focus on. They want us not to be preoccupied just with the past, but to learn from the past and to now come together. That's why they elect us differently. There are people who voted for Ken and voted for me, different parties. People who voted in Bungoma, Kakamega, Nyeri, Muranga, all want. And I've gone around this country. Despite the diversity in our people, there's a beautiful reality that every single Kenyan, deep down, wants the same thing, Jeff. They want to go about their lives peacefully. They want to make something out of themselves and to guarantee their children a future. And the day we'll stop hearing questions about inclusivity is the day that an ordinary Kenyan knows that no matter where you're from, no matter what your surname is, no matter what village you're brought up in, your child has the same chance at life, the same chance to access quality education. That if your child falls sick in Lamu, they'll have the same quality of health care as a child in Kisumu or in Nairobi. Now, those are the things that we want to that we need to all focus on together. And I see Parliament as a forum through which those who have been chosen to represent the interests, whether in the Senate, National Assembly, those in county assemblies, the governors, must spend more energy focusing on the things that unite us and the things that are common, and which is why even in KYPA, when we started, we said, listen, guys, some of you are from NASA, that then it was called. Some of you are from TNA, URP then, now Jubilee. If we decide to make this about politics, we will never agree. But let us agree on the things to focus on. And I remember Ken taking us through some of the sessions on education. I took the members through the sessions on financial empowerment of young people, on job opportunities. We have looked at healthcare, reproductive health for young people. And if more of us focus on these things that all Kenyans invariably want us to focus on, tomorrow no one will care where the president comes from, Jeff. No one will care if the president is from their tribe, if the president is a Kikuyu or a Luo or an Elmolo or an Jemp. No one will care, because every Kenyan then will create an identity of being a Kenyan. The reason why we go to our tribal cocoons is because that becomes the least common denominator. Because someone asks themselves, what does it mean to be a Kenyan? We're just 45 million people around the same borders who have to get along. Because these things that we want to reach us have not been reaching us. And that's why I'm glad the last 5 years have been able to provide tremendous progress in some of these things. That a woman can give birth in Isiolo in a hospital. That you can go for dialysis in Mandera. That now you're in Nigeria and you're starting to see roads. These things don't happen immediately. It takes time, concerted effort, and joint focus. That is my prayer and hope. Whether or not I am in politics 5 years from now, whether I leave it or not, whether it is Ken, whoever it is, let's focus on these things. Let's find justice and peace. Let us not fight, please.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, I could talk all evening about this. This is a great show. This has been very refreshing, for lack of a better word. We need this. In fact, Wavinya Ndeti, famous for Yaliondoele Sipite, she says, we are one people, one country. We must agree to disagree. Dialogue is paramount to heal our country. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure, and I hope you guys can come back more often to this show. Mheshimiwa, we promise that library, we're going to stock it up. We've started on a great note here. I'll
give you my check now or later. Choose. I promise. I'll give it to you. I won't give it to him. Because I'd love to, but it's a later shida.
Later. I'll take it.
I'll give you. I'll be before I go.
Absolutely. Yeah. And ex-Jindela, are you listening? Yeah. You're listening. You're just back from SA? You've heard, man. We're going to do this library thing. I mean, there's a lot of pressure on it.
Yeah,
right?
Let's do it.
Bagathi girls, right?
Yes.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to that.
Our kids deserve the best.
Absolutely. No, you're so
You've
right.
seen the schools in the US.
Man.
You've seen the schools we have in Karen.
You
You,
know
don't
what?
have to go far. Our kids deserve the best.
Thank you. And look, the Princetons and the Harvards and all those are funded by alumni and you know, former students, former teachers, former presidents.
Yeah.
They fund those things so that, you know, people can be educated year after year.
And that's what I'm trying to do, to get a lot of the alumni together. Moi girls, what happened there? I remember we made that commitment.
Yeah.
Currency primary, we need to do the same thing. Lenana and all these schools.
Absolutely.
Let's come back together.
By the way, Storea Boys has a gala dinner later this month.
Oh wow!
Huge. I mean, they want to raise 10 million or 20 million shillings so that they can educate more of the kids that they do. Educate more. Tomorrow morning we have the director Charles Machete, a former student
on the show.
Yeah, who's
Jeff,
on the radio show.
I know the show is ending. Please allow us to wish success to all the candidates sitting the exams,
Good.
whether in class 8 and those who will start next week will be senator for Nairobi for some time. The more I hang out with my friend Mike Sonko, and the more I hang out with the president, the more I don't want any of those positions, because it is tough. Leadership, some of these positions are really tough, and it's not that I'm, afraid of going for those, but I believe that even from where I am, let me make a change. This hunger for politics, that you want to be something at all costs, that you can do anything to become a governor or a president. Or is where we get it wrong.
But will that day come, Mheshimiwa? Will that day come where it won't matter? It won't matter who's at State House.
It must come.
I think it will come maybe in another 20 years or so. But I think
so you guys will still be around.
Inshallah.
I think. And it will be a gift to the country, so that politics is not as polarizing. But for right now, I think, for instance, these elections that you were asking me about, the boycotts. I think one of the statements that NASA made yesterday, and which to me is an important one on two levels, is a statement that we can't let this election stand. It has to be challenged, and what happened on the 26th, and we take it to court, and we have to challenge it, because it wasn't a level playing field, and that's why we withdrew. NASA stepped back out of it. And to say we will just move on like nothing happened, we won't take the concerns of Raila Odinga. It's not about Raila Odinga. It's about the millions of Kenyans who believe in it. And I know the intelligence knows this, and Uhuru Kenyatta, as a sophisticated politician, knows that there are people who are not with him and believe and hoped Raila would give them the different direction. We really need a dialogue around clean and fair elections right now. Why? Because if we don't fix it, then no other election for, as our leader and we of NASA have asked for, around the elections and having a clean election. Let whoever wins, win legitimately. Then at that point, what you will have is two ways out, and it will be very unfair for Uhuru. Because once you've been sworn in for your second term, and there's a crisis, and you haven't served a full second term of 4 or 5 years, then what happens to poor Uhuru Kenyatta? He can't run for another term. We have term limits. So I think we need to think about that carefully.
Sakaja, you agree?
That to me is important.
Completely. Jeff, we must be a country that respects and upholds the rule of law. The person who determines when an election is held or when an election is not held is not Raila Odinga. It is not Uhuru Kenyatta. It is not any individual. And that is why I was saying that the winner of this process is the Constitution. Because no matter who you may
university who are coming, who are sharper than I, who are more talented than I, have better people skills, who could be better presidents for this country than. So let's nurture a whole class of leaders so that we are not desperate for one savior. Let us always have good leaders, and it be their standard taken.
Great point. Senator.
There's a quote by Jomo Kenyatta that I like. He says that our children might learn about heroes of the past. Our task is to make ourselves architects of the future. That is what I want to be remembered by, not by any position. Leadership is not position, it is influence. It is what you're able to do from whichever corner you are. I was in the last parliament with Ken. He was a member of Kibra. I was a nominated MP, and he knows the gripe nominated members get. But I'm proud that I was able to bring the highest number of private member bills without any position, So about what I want to go for, I want to...
In this country will matter. People won't participate, won't think it matters. And I think there's a space for this country to pull back with this constitution as we have, because let me give it to you this way. There's election cycles. We're finishing the election cycle of 2017. At this presidential level, it was challenged at the Supreme Court, annulled, and a new election ordered. This cycle didn't end cleanly on the 26th, and anyone who lies to you that it ended on the 26th is deceiving themselves. I think the crisis is just getting started. With the long impact being, if we let this election stand as it is at 26 was good enough, people won't be voting in future and won't believe in the elections. But number two is, if Uhuru Kenyatta is sworn in for his second term based on the election of the 26th, What stands at risk is if there's a major crisis and the country pulls together and say, let's have a dialogue, which Raila has asked